What's good, everyone? It's Adam from imamusicmogul. Welcome to a brand new video. Today is going to be a little bit of a follow-up video to our last video that we posted on the MacBook Pro 16-inch M1 Max. I got a lot of questions in that one asking which one you think would be better for music producers. In this video, we're going to cover that exact topic. So we're going to choose between the two SoCs that are available for the new MacBook Pros, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. Which one is better for music producers? The answer is pretty straightforward, but we'll get into it. Let's just start off with the screen size. You got two screen sizes on the new MacBook Pros, a 14-inch and a 16-inch. This really comes down to your personal preference. Do you want a smaller package, a more portable package, or do you want a bigger screen while you're on the go? For me, I originally wanted the 14-inch, but I think the 16-inch is maybe the way to go if you're going to be working on the screen a lot. That's really something that you have to think about. Will you be working on the laptop a lot, or will it be connected to an external display? If it's connected to an external display, I say go for the 14, save the couple extra $100. But if you're gonna be working off of the laptop itself, then you wanna go for the bigger screen. And you can't go wrong working off of these screens. Like I said in the previous video, these screens are just beautiful. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the two SoCs, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. For music producers, what you want to focus on is CPU and RAM. Now, there's a little funny thing happening here between the M1 Pros and the M1 Max, and that is the memory bandwidth. Typically speaking, memory bandwidth does help a lot in video editing circumstances, but it can help in music production if you have a lot of plugins and you have large sessions. All right, so on the 14-inch MacBook Pro, the base model, you get an M1 Pro with 8-core CPU, a 14-core GPU, and a 16-core neural engine. Now, M1 Pro, M1 Max, the CPUs are the same except this base model. So if it was me, I would pay the extra $200, get the extra 2 cores on the CPU because that is very important to music production, and $200 will probably go a long way, more so than the GPUs. So let's just config this out here. So we got an M1 Pro 10-core CPU, 14-core GPU, and 16-core neural engine. Now, if you do some video editing, 4K video, possibly even 8K video in the future, I don't know, you know your situation best. Maybe the extra $100 is worth it to you, but if you're strictly just working in music, you can save the $100 and put that towards a bigger hard drive. So let's go down to our hard drive here. Hard drive space is very personal, and it really depends on how much you use. Do you like to work off an external drive, or do you like to work off of an internal drive? For me personally, I would recommend to at least 1 terabyte of SSD storage. It's always better to have more or as much as you can afford. If you're trying to save money, then I would probably cut back on the hard drive first and upgrade the RAM, simply because the RAM cannot be upgraded. At least with the storage and the SSD, you can plug in an external hard drive afterwards. Now, the debate between the 16 gigs and the 32 gigabyte memory is, I mean, some people are going to say just get 16. Some people are going to say for sure get 32 for music production. Now, I think 16 gigabits you can get through and do quite a bit, have large sessions, and you'll be fine with 16 gigs. Depending on how long you're going to keep this computer for that you're about to purchase, 3 to 5 years, maybe you want to go up to a 32 gig of unified memory. Now, with the 16 gig unified memory, the computer will probably require a little bit more for certain tasks if you have a lot of things open, a lot of plugins running, or just a large session in general. It will probably pull some shared memory from the SSDs and use that. Some people don't like that shared memory thing. They like to have it allocated to the RAM itself. But I think you would be good if you're just a music producer. You know, your sessions aren't huge or massive. 16 gigs should be enough for you. The $400 is a little bit pricey, but I guess you could take off the SSD storage, save the money, the $200 there, upgrade to the RAM, and you got faster RAM. But really, I think this config is good to go. If you don't care for the 1 terabyte storage, just get the 512 SSD, and you're looking at $21.99 for a MacBook Pro. That is extremely powerful. Like, don't get me wrong, this is by no sense of the meaning a base computer base config. This thing is a beast in its own right, and you will be definitely happy with this setup. Once again, if you are strictly in music production and work a lot with audio, you do not need the additional GPU cores, but I do recommend spending the extra $200 for the 10-core CPU if you can afford it. If not, just go with the base model. You will still be very happy with that setup. Here is the Montero Lil Nas X spatial audio session open up in Logic. Just want to give you an idea of how this session performs on the 16-inch MacBook Pro M1 Max with 64 gigs of RAM. Here is the threads from our CPU, and I will pull up our activity monitor so you can see what's happening with the CPU there as well. So let's go ahead and play back. We'll go to a busy part here. Oh, by the way, there's about 140 tracks in this session, mixed with software instrument tracks, audio, and a bunch of plugins. So let's go ahead and just play this back here, starting from chorus. So right now, our CPU is idling with 84.4-ish% just idle, not being used. We are using about 12% right now, and 90% of that is being used for the Logic session that is being played back right now. Final Cut is kind of idle in the background here, hovering at 4.8% usage of our 16-inch usage over here. As far as memory goes, we are looking at about 4 gigs of RAM used for this Logic session to be open and played back. This just gives you an idea of what you can expect when trying to decide how much RAM you actually need. But I do have Control Center running at 3.75 gigs, which is a lot. I've been noticing my Control Center memory usage has been sort of out of control. Hopefully that gets updated in the next update of Monterey, but I can just go ahead and stop that task. And you'll see when it reloads, where is it over here? It's gonna go down to like about 30 megs. So if you see that on your own computer, that's how you fix that. But just wanted to give you an idea of how much RAM is being used with this sort of workflow. Now, if we jump up to the M1 Max 24-core GPU over here, you're adding another, from the base, $500. That's a lot of money, and you're really not paying for anything different here. You're only paying for more GPU cores. And once again, in music production, you don't really care about the GPU cores. So going from 16 to 24 is not going to be a big difference for you. But aside from that, the only thing different here is that you can upgrade to 64 gigabits of unified memory. I mean, we already mentioned that 16 gigs should be enough, so you don't have to worry about that. But the memory bandwidth is larger on the M1 Max SoCs rather than the M1 Pro SoCs. I think it goes from 200 gigabits to 400 gigabits. It doubles. Let's just go to compare here for a second. So on the M1 Pro chips, yes, you do get 200 gigabits of memory bandwidth, and on the Max chips, you get 400 gigabits of memory bandwidth. Now, this is up for debate. Will you actually see that doubling of memory bandwidth really change in your workflow? I'm going to venture to guess no. I think the memory bandwidth is more useful for video editors because it requires more memory to be pulled back and forth from the RAM. But that's just my opinion. Of course, you can let me know down in the comment section below what you think about that, because that is something that I was debating myself. And that was something that stood out to me of a core difference between the M1 Pro and the M1 Max, aside from the GPU cores. I just wanted to point that out. To sum it up, if you are looking for a computer, one, decide how big of a screen you want, 14 or 16. They're both very good screens. Two, you select the color. Do you want space gray or do you want silver? And lastly, do you want the M1 Pro or the M1 Max? If you're a music producer, I would stick to the M1 Pro. Even the base 14-inch M1 Pro model is extremely powerful and will get you through many years of production. But I would recommend upgrading the SoC to the 10-core CPU over the 8-core CPU just to give you that little extra power you may need in your sessions. So hopefully that answers some of your questions on the M1 Pro, M1 Max debate for music producers. If you do have any questions on this, we can go ahead and talk in the comment section below. I'm really happy to talk about this because this is something that I went through over and over in my head as well. This right here is a review unit, so I am still in the process of deciding which ones I want to go for. I do have some video editing, so I may go for the M1 Max, but I'll let you guys know. I'll update you guys on which one I end up deciding to go with. Oh, by the way, forgot to mention at the top of the video, the audio for this video is being recorded using the built-in microphones on the MacBook Pro. Also, microphones in the 14 and 16 inch are the same, and the speaker setup is the same as well. So really it just comes down to those SoCs, the M1 Pro, M1 Max, which one you want, and the screen size. Other than that, thanks for watching this video. I hope I cleared up some answers for you. We'll see you on the next one. Later, peace.